Hey Danielle, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Good. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
Back at
So,
it.
so what was the genesis for the script?
After shooting the little hours, I came back to America and I read this article about a manager from an unnamed Italian franchise restaurant that had gone on this immersion program that they had at their institute in Italy. And they were sort of thinking it was going to be this incredible life-changing experience and they'd be staying at this villa. It turns out they were staying at like a nasty dorm and there really wasn't any structure to the program and they kind of felt like they were trapped in this sort of shit show of a situation. And I just thought that was a pretty funny setup, so I just started creating an outline based on that and then obviously taking liberties.
Yeah, that whole situation just sounds ripe for comedy.
Yeah,
Although I bet they did not have boars.
I mean, you never know. If you go to Italy, there's boars everywhere.
So, how did the process for writing this one compare to Horse Girl?
It started off relatively similar in the sense that we were working off an outline. And then the intention was to shoot it in the summer of 2020. And then obviously COVID hit and hit Italy really hard. And so we put a pin in it. And in the interim, while we were waiting for things to open up again, we decided to just write it out as a screenplay, like a traditional screenplay. And so that was different because off of my previous three movies, we were working off of outlines. So we had an actual script, and due to a variety of situations, we just didn't really have a lot of time to be able to kind of explore improvisationally. And so it was a benefit to have an actual screenplay and in order to make our days.
So, did that feel different compared to your previous films?
Mm, it felt different from my last three films, but my first film was scripted. So I came up as a writer, so it was only different in regards to the way I had been working just prior, but it wasn't out of my wheelhouse. It's something I've done before.
And what was it like getting to work with this cast, especially several of them you've already worked with before?
The cast was incredible and was one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. And the cast that I worked with before, it's always a pleasure to get back on the saddle with them and try different things. So for instance, with Molly, I think she's generally had more of a more reserved roles in my previous movies. And the intention was to kind of let her open it up a little bit and, go full bore, no pun intended. And some of the newer people, Tim Heidecker, I've known for over 20 years and we've been friends and he's someone I've always wanted to work with. So that was really fun. And Ben Sinclair is a friend of mine and it was great to get a chance to collaborate with him. Alessandro Nivola, I'm a fan of, never got a chance, never really knew him, met him because of this project. Aiden Mayeri is someone that I was unfamiliar with, but saw her reel and was blown away. And I'm so glad. So sort of like my other movies, when it's always a benefit to have familiar faces to kind of help, having been there before. And but I always welcome new faces, and just like all my other movies, anyone that just comes in as a brand new performer that I've never worked with before, I tend to just fall in love with them and want to work with them also forever. So just have the ever increasing circle of performers that I love to pull from.
And of the new cast members, who was the biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise. I guess the biggest surprise. I guess Aiden Mayeri. Zach Woods too. I mean, Zach I've known a little bit through Aubrey, through UCB stuff, and he's obviously a genius, and I'm familiar with his work, and I'm such a fan. But yeah, Aiden was great. There was like some sort of kismet stuff happening. The intention was always to have a body double style score for this movie. I'm such a fan of Pino Donaggio, and I got really lucky to actually get Pino Donaggio to do the score. But when I got Aiden's reel, there was a scene. The first part of it was a scene from that show. I think it's Homecoming with Julia Roberts. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And in her scene, they're playing the song Telescope from Body Double, and I was like, "What are the chances? This is crazy." So it just felt like it was meant to be, and now she's a big part of all of our lives, and she's great.
And pandemic aside, what was the biggest challenge of the production?
The biggest challenge of the production probably was not having a producer on set. We're probably one of the first movies ever to like actually shoot a film and not have a producer on set. So that was very challenging. We were able to make it work, but it definitely was something we had to navigate the whole time we were shooting.
And what was the biggest impact that the pandemic had, other than delaying the planned shoot for 2020?
Other than making our movie wait a year, I would say just the flow of production is sort of at the mercy of COVID protocols, and between masking and distancing and testing and just sort of paranoia. I think all of that stuff was never a factor and became a legitimate sort of function of contemporary filmmaking. So that was definitely something to adjust to and was not much appreciated.
I know. I mean, it's been interesting talking to filmmakers over the past year and a half, where they're so used to being sitting right next to the editor in the edit, and then you go from that to just talking over Zoom, looking at all the cuts.
Yeah, I edited this in person. So my editor and he was, I guess, because this is still early days of the pandemic, was part of my pod, and we set up the editing room in our guest house. So that was cool. I did this TV show for Showtime at the beginning of the pandemic called oh my god, called Synopsis, and we had edited on with Zoom, and so that was definitely, and we shot it basically on, recorded it on Zoom. So that was more of like a pure Zoom experience. Interestingly enough, I do feel like editing with Zoom isn't that bad. It's kind of fine, since the majority of the time you're looking at the back of your editor's head. This is like the first time you can actually see your editor's face while you're editing. So that was kind of like fun to see Ryan Brown, who's my editor, to see his eyes instead of like his neck, the nape of his neck. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. I think things are, slightly coming back to normal. I'm more on the paranoid side with stuff. So to me, it's not normal, but it seems like people are pretending like everything's okay.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm still masking up when I go into stores.
Hell yeah, I'm messing up anywhere indoors.
And what is it about Italy that you find so appealing as a location for films?
Well, Italy, I think, is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I've been lucky enough to go there a bunch of times over the last few years. After having shot The Little Hours there, I was discovering so many new areas and so many amazing cultural things. Like, obviously there's food, but I think there's so much beauty, natural beauty, art, music. The people are amazing, the architecture. And I think having gone there, it feels like you're just scratching the surface. Like it's just the tip of the iceberg. And every time I go back, I feel like I'm discovering new things, even in places I've been before. So there's something about that I just feel like you can't get enough of. And it lends itself to films because it's just, the intention of this movie was obviously to play down the beauty a little bit, to almost be disappointed that you're not getting these amazing shots of food and landscapes, because you're basically forced to stay in this like horrible place. Like you're so close to paradise, but you can't touch it. Even then, I think, there's a lot of stuff that's insanely beautiful in the movie that sneaked in. But yeah, it's just truly like a magical place.
And how did it feel to get back to a major film festival premiere during South by in March?
Going to a film festival was extremely trippy. Like I said, I'm more on the paranoid side of the spectrum, and it was the first time I'd been in a movie theater since COVID started. So to go from not being in a movie theater to being in a room of like 600 people, I mean, obviously everyone was masked, but it was definitely trippy. I think, especially for comedies, it's super important to have a communal experience, because there is sort of a contagious enthusiasm, and hearing groups of people laughing versus a couple of people chuckling in your living room really lends itself to comedies. So I think more than anything, like, comedies benefit big time from being in theaters. So that was great. And getting to go to a couple of festivals and being able to see it with an actual live audience was was incredible.
Yeah. And was it different? Did it feel different to watch at South by as opposed to Sundance like your previous films?
It's hard to say, mainly because it's such a specific situation with COVID. Like, I know this year Sundance wasn't able to do anything in person. So, I mean, between watching your movies over the computer and watching it with an audience, I'd say it's always, like what the guy was just saying, like, it's incredible to have an audience to watch it with. So previous years, I've never really had an experience of being in a room full of people with masks. Like, when you're like looking at the audience, it's definitely looks post-apocalyptic, but everyone's doing the best that they can.
And what do you hope people take away from watching the film?
I just hope people have a good time. I mean, it's like a silly, fun movie, and I think there's not there obviously is some amount of social message there, and but I don't think you need to focus on that to enjoy it. But I hope that some of the, I guess, subtler, and I guess some of it's like not subtle messaging does come across, but at the same time, you can just enjoy it, and it's just a fun comedy.
All right. Thank you so much. It was so great catching up, and I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thanks, Danielle. Take it easy.
You too.